Tommy, you're one of the, if not the most forward-facing content creator-focused competitors inside of Halo. You often stream for long hours. You upload videos to YouTube.
I just think it's just like you're already making money, you're already living the dream. Like you put out content that keeps people involved, keeps people invested, makes them understand a bit more as to why they should be invested and see some crazy plays, produce some content that then churn out even more and bring even more back to the community and yourself monetarily and just more culturally. I think that's a big part as to why like there was a lot of success earlier on with just like the grassroots hunger nature with like earlier Halo where like just the forge maps, the clips, the pictures, like just custom games, all those things that brought people together. And it was like that imagination, that drive that really kept the community alive while, the developers on their end kept it together.
Welcome to Tide the Leader, a community-driven podcast exploring the past, present, and future of competitive Halo. I'm Eli. Joined alongside me in every episode is Makowski. Our guest today has been busy cementing his status as one of Halo's greatest. He's an MVP, a Halo World Champion, and one of the game's most likable personalities. He's known for having the most recognizable hair in Halo, speaking up for the benefit of the community on social media, and going Super Saiyan on the main stage. Please welcome to the show, Lucid. Tommy, how you doing today?
How's it going, guys? Doing great.
Just keeping up with your feed on social media. This month looks to be one of the best in your life. On socials, you've shared that you just got engaged, just bought a house, super exciting milestones to reach. So first of all, congratulations. And what has your partner Kylie meant for you as a support system? And how does it feel to have so much success in esports that you two just bought your first home?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. This month has been really busy, really exciting, a lot of planning and just kind of forethought going into it, really thinking ahead, especially with those milestones. It's kind of funny because it was a little bit backwards where we, Kylie and I, she and I started looking at homes before I even popped the question. And because I proposed in England after the major. The timeline kind of started getting pushed ahead really quick because we were looking at homes and then we found like this house here and it was just like it checked all of our boxes and then some. So then I was like, okay, I got to get my crap together. I got to really make sure that I'm like on the ball. So the proposal definitely it also, I mean, the trip was great. We already planned for like a little mini vacation. So then the proposal came in. It was almost like seamless in my mind. Like this is just like the perfect opportunity. And we've been together for so long and she's meant a lot to me. In and out of game, of course. But I've thought about this plenty of times where like just somebody there that's just always supporting you, always there for you, the ups, the downs, it doesn't matter. Like they're there for you. And that's just always a feeling that's very comforting. That stability, I think, especially in like a competitive landscape for myself and like the teams that I've been a part of, is always just a good backbone. It's a good foundation that kind of keeps you grounded. I think that's definitely lent a lot to my success. It's like maybe I could have had other partners or whoever throughout all these years, but it's like I could be just working a normal 9 to 5 regular job, being a regular person right about now, if we weren't together. And it's like I think that's like that definitely could be possible. She's meant a lot to me, obviously, and I couldn't appreciate her anymore.
Yeah, esports still being in its infancy stages, you need someone behind you. It's often that you see, someone like Lucid on the main stage or Bravo on set, even people that are behind the scenes all have someone that's supporting them. And it goes a really long way. I know for me personally, it means a lot to have someone that's like, all right, this is a crazy career path to take. This is a wild thing to be so passionate about, but you do you, boo, right? Do your thing. So
Yeah.
It means a lot to have that level of support. Well, with most shows, we start with the origin story, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the show since we just got back from London. Let's talk about that. How was the experience overall? You mentioned you got engaged. You had a vacation afterwards. Second place, got to the grand finals. Probably wanted to take the win. I'd say definitely. But all things considered, it looked like a great trip. How was the experience? The food, the jet lag. Talk to us about London.
Yeah, I mean, overall it was pretty good. I thought the jet lag would be a little bit worse, but I've been to London only one time before, travel internationally that one singular time, but I knew that'd be something to kind of accommodate for. We had like a red eye, so we were basically traveling through the night, try to get some rest, do what you can, try to make sure that you're not like gonna randomly be going to bed at like 5 in the morning type of thing. So we got there, we did take like a nap or two, and then still made like just exhausted. So got a really good night's rest the first night. And I think that kind of set us up to accommodate for the jet lag relatively well. I think like there was definitely some things where it's like just like a passive, like you're not going to feel your best. So props to the international teams that are always traveling to North America for doing it. But for the most part, it was okay. The accommodations, the event was really awesome. I think the only criticism most other pro players have said is like maybe the main stage could have been a little bit different, a little bit better of a setup. But I still think the venue was still pretty cool. The community, I think, was the biggest takeaway for me. Just everyone being so appreciative, so excited. Like everyone's always excited when going to LANs, of course. Like that's just LANs or LANs. There's no other feeling like it. It's just like any sort of sporting event. Like seeing it, being it in person, there's nothing like it. But I think it's just that built up, excited anxiety that these the European community has had for so long, not having a major like this. They really just showed up, showed out, really appreciated everything that we were there to kind of put on a show for, and they're there supporting everyone, the good, the bad, the ugly. It was like a beautiful experience in that type of sense. So it was really awesome still.
Obviously, we didn't get to go. We were casting from home for LVT, waking up at like 4:00 in the morning our time.
Yeah.
But we got to see like the drums and the trumpet and the main stage.
Crazy.
Yeah, like I don't know. There's just so much energy in that room. It was definitely really fun to watch and experience, even from over here. Speaking of your tournament run, Optic started HCS London in the Gauntlet. Went to a game 5 with Sentinels and had a challenging series against Quadrant. How did you guys prepare as a team once you got to London? Were you guys looking at these teams specifically? We imagine some of the jet lag is playing a part. So physically outside of the game, you're probably preparing in other ways. Was there a reason that maybe the start of the tournament was a bit more difficult for you guys?
I wouldn't say necessarily. We knew when we came in, like that was the death gauntlet right there. That was the death bracket, or not full play. And I mean, if you're a team like us, like we expect to try to win a tournament, we're gonna have to beat and play everybody and feel comfortable with everybody. So like obviously it's gonna be a tough pool, but it's like none of these guys should be. It's not like some major worry in our mind. It's like even if we had like a phase or a SSG in our pool, it's like, well, that sucks, but it's gonna be what's gonna be. We got to beat these guys if we want to win the tournament. So there was no major thing. Sen definitely showed up. I think we came out a little bit flat, but we were still kind of staying consistent throughout the pool play. Again, Quadrant was the same way too. Like we just held strong, had our game plans. We definitely have been practicing plenty, going over plenty. So yeah, I think we felt pretty comfortable for the most part, but it was a pretty smooth pool play for the most part. Overall, there was no major worries.
Yeah, after pool play, which we had Jesse on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he said the same thing. He it's the pool of death, but it's the best pool to be in the sense that it's the best preparation for championship bracket. So going into the championship bracket, you guys 3-0, a scrappy up-and-coming Proton team, and then you go up against FaZe for El Clasico in the winter semifinals, where you guys got swept. What was ultimately best attributed to that loss?
Yeah, I mean, just the same way that I just mentioned how we came out flat against like Sen. It's like that same sort of feeling that I think we had going into the FaZe series, and it wasn't like any of us were like, "Oh man, I didn't sleep that well," or like this or that. Like we weren't even making excuses leading up to it, or even after that. It was just like, man, we just kind of like all those games were super winnable. They're all really, really tight. I think it was the Aqua Flag was that first series, or maybe I don't know if that was grand finals. That might have been grand finals actually. Either way, I think it was Forbidden Flag. It was actually kind of a similar boat where it's like it's just back and forth, back and forth. Like we have some opportunities that we didn't take advantage of as well, and then FaZe clutches up here and there. It's like the same thing. Like that's why it's just so tight between us, and it's a 3-0. But that was like one of those series. Like I'll be honest, whenever it's like, yeah, we just got smacked. That wasn't one where we got smacked. It was just like back and forth, and they got the better of us in that series. And that's kind of how I felt like about most of the tournament playing against those guys. And I for whatever reason, I feel like we kind of have that back and forth the most with FaZe, that roster the most, where it's like we have their number, they have our number. We just kind of really study one another and know how each other play very well. And it's like some weekends it just goes either way. But at the end of the day, to win a tournament, like you got to be able to beat every single team. So that was just not ours. It was not ours this time.
Really interesting that you mentioned coming out flat. I remember when we were watch partying on Sunday, watching SSG versus you guys. We made the same comment. SSG just looks flat. against Optic. And I think Stellar in his interview afterwards said the exact same thing. He said, we came out flat. And then I hear that from you. I think Jesse might have mentioned it last week on the podcast. So I'm starting to see a trend here. What is it about those game ones? Why are they so difficult to start off? Is it because you're not warmed up yet? And how important is it in a best of 5 to win that game one? How much weight do you put on that opening match?
I mean, I would definitely, any game win is really important in a series. So obviously the first one makes an impact. I as a player, like I couldn't really care less how we win as long as we are winning. So it's like if we lose our game one, as long as we're not getting absolutely like 250 zeroed, 3-0'd, 5-0'd, whatever in a flag, it's like, all right, we're still in it. We need to be looking ahead, looking forward. Like if there's anything that's like general to kind of carry into our overall vibe and feel of like how we need to improve, that's like okay to kind of talk about, but we shouldn't be like dissecting our games like mid-series. That's not how you should be handling anything like that. I think SSG is a good series to really explain that like, yeah, we actually came out, they won the game one and it was kind of back and forth, but like they won the game one kind of handedly. And that was like, you know, how they said they felt flat in the series, like we felt flat in that game one. So that's like maybe one of those things talking about where I wouldn't necessarily attribute it to like, oh, the jet lag or the travel, but it's like everyone kind of felt that maybe to some extent. So it was just like, maybe that was like sort of plays into a feeling of like unconsciously being uncomfortable to some extent that like I'm not like none of us are even fully aware of. But that's just kind of how it was. I felt like the tournament for me, like I felt comfortable by the end, like or more comfortable by the end of it, but especially for that first Friday with pool play and then some of Saturday, like I just didn't feel as comfortable. I had to tweak some settings. I just didn't feel the best. I felt like again, like my rest was pretty good. I was eating pretty well, but I don't know, it just came out and like just felt kind of off, a little bit off. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, each and every game in a series really does matter. That's just how it comes down to.
It's really interesting and kind of introspective of you to recognize like, yeah, even unconsciously there could be like your body's adjusting. We're all humans, right? So like your body naturally goes through cycles and you're going to be playing your best one series and maybe not the best the next series. And sometimes it's just literally your body like needing water, food, sleep, whatever. So I almost think there's kind of a skill gap outside of the game, like to make sure that you're more often prepared than others because the game is so close and won by like a single kill or a single play that it's like whoever's just taking care of themselves outside of the game probably has an edge against the other team. So
absolutely.
You also mentioned had to tweak some settings. I feel like the new network update on LAN kind of feels a little bit different, like in a weird way. So we were at LVT Orlando. I'm sure you got to watch some of that. And we actually played and I had to like turn my FOV down. I don't know. And then like my sensitivity just felt different. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how do you feel about the network update as it applies to LAN?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I'm not the biggest fan. I that was like the one thing about the previous network update was like online was terrible. I still think it's not that great now. I thought it was for whatever reason it felt good for me the first few weeks, and then obviously waiting for LAN was like the big question mark. Like I guess we'll see how it is. Not getting any practice on it, like looking back on it, like the LBT LAN that you guys threw together was probably actually some good like forward practice for some of those guys to kind of just get a feel for it because it definitely felt different. And it's not to say it necessarily felt bad. It was LAN. Like LAN is still pretty true to like how the game should feel, or like it doesn't feel like you're kind of getting joked as you do online, but just wasn't used to it. So I wasn't changing a whole lot of stuff. Once I got back here though, because I would say even I think just the online aspect for me, like I've been kind of feeling that need, that desire after the network update to like really change my settings up a bit because things have just felt the meta's really weird right now. It's really shifted greatly, even after the network update, not just like the bandit starts that we had. Like going from Arlington to now is really odd to me that the network has really had, it goes deeper than just online, which like what we're talking about now with LAN aspect still showing up. So
Yeah, things like the repulsor, right? The repulsor, it's
useless almost.
yeah, almost useless. Yeah, you've got to be at least a meter away. I feel like before the networking update, you could be 5 meters away and still get some juice out of it. So that's something that replicates from online to LAN. So you're right. It's not just oh, you go on LAN, don't worry about it, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know, like we used to enjoy, I guess, in the classic Halos a little bit because you'd
well,
go from online to LAN and it would just be like, holy shit, this is the best.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. And even now, like there has been a weird shift after that network update that I think is just going to take some time to get used to. So LAN still felt good, a little weird. My first thoughts is not the best. I just love the way the game felt before the network update on LAN. Like it felt, I think, a bit crisper than this does, but still felt good.
Well, we're going to ask you some more questions about London, but this seems like a great segue to ask you Frosty's question, who we had on a previous episode. He specifically wanted to get your high-level, detailed thoughts on the current iteration of the meta. And he even said outside of just the bandit, which it's kind of sound like you were alluding to, dive a little bit deeper into those thoughts for me and really talk about what the conversation looks like behind the scenes from the professionals, because I know that there's been discussions for even things like Jiang, Heatwave, and Shotgun. Where are we at in that process, and what are your specific thoughts on where we're at with the meta?
That's a good question, because we've all been talking about it, especially behind closed doors, just amongst ourselves as professional players. This is our livelihood, so we're talking about it a lot and thinking about it a lot. I think the current meta is not as true to what competitive Halo is. Now, that's not to say that it's like, oh, we're playing an entirely different game. I enjoyed the BR meta, but I especially like now, like getting into this year 3, I knew and I felt it. I was a proponent of it, saying like we should change a little bit. We should definitely change up. I thought the bandit or single fire weapon was definitely like not necessarily a needed change, but it'd be like I feel like welcomed. I just think that the state of play went from like super lockdown cross map all the time portion, has now led to almost the opposite end, where kill times feel really fast, almost too fast. And it feels like you have to just be in the right place at the right time, hitting your first shot, even more so. Because people were always complaining about like being down, like, oh, if you lost first shot with a BR, like you're always a guaranteed death, which I didn't necessarily agree with, but I could understand still too, because it was just like a more slow, like repetitive, like not the hardest thing to shoot with the BR. But I feel like now it just feels more camp, like it feels campy, more in the sense of just playing rattier and just relying on those quick like two-man shots, like two-man like team shots that you can get, which obviously in a Halo being a team game, that's always been very important. It just felt that much more cranked, that it needs to be dialed back a bit. And then that on top of some of the jankiness of movement that's been introduced, the level that it is with the ghost jumps, with the jiggle peaks, I don't think both of those things are necessarily bad. They're just too, again, cranked up to the max. So it's just like, I feel like the time to kill should be a bit slower. It doesn't need to be as slow as the BR was. I feel like that's it being a single shot and it being a faster time to kill is good, but I feel like right now there's a very fast perfect TTK and there's a very fast average TTK. So it doesn't feel like you have to always actually be on your A game to be like stepping above the rest in a lobby. It's almost like, to me, it feels almost like COD timings. Like that's, again, it's not like we're playing COD, but we're playing almost like the Halo version of COD in that aspect of how I feel about it. It just feels not necessarily luck driven, but it's just like certain timings like that. It's the same with the Jiggle Peak. Like obviously Jiggle Peak has a meta, or it has a skill gap to it. I just feel like it's not actually as skillful when it's just like snap. Like we're playing Russian roulette almost, of like who's hitting their shots, especially online, and it gets better on LAN, but it's like going from an S plus tier sort of mechanic in terms of how effective it is to like an S tier like mechanic on LAN. So it's like not as good, but it's still absolutely disgusting. And that's like the ghost jump too. It's just super unreadable. People are basically at their hips whenever they're hitting like a jump where they should never be able to do that far down, like over a ledge. So it's just like there's a certain like unreadability. There's a certain like uncontrollable aspect. And then spawns. Like spawns I feel like have progressively gotten worse. They were even worse before they updated it. I think maybe they updated it after Arlington. They applied like the BR range of like negative influence to the bandit or something like that, which is crazy that was never a thing in the first place, but it's still bad. And I don't even necessarily know if that's just a bandit thing or like current iteration thing. Like spawns have been kind of bad in this game for a very long time.
Feels like Streets is unplayable right now. You can have a tower locked down and have a squad spawn occur for the other team at PD.
Exactly. And so that Aqua is also a similar sense of just like super close, like entire half, 70% of the map is wide open, and then everyone is fighting in one corner, like next to each other. It's like, this isn't Halo, dude. Like we're just playing like horde mode against each other. And it's like, that's again, it's like a suit. There's obviously controllable aspects of Halo. We're still playing Halo. So there's very controllable aspects, but there's like too many unreadable things occurring that I think gives it just that randomness feel that I just don't think should be the case. So that's why like I've been a proponent of talking about like time to kill. I mean, even the time to kill for the bandit, I think is not necessarily bad. It just shouldn't be as easy. It's like the time to kill should be almost harder to make happen, and then like slowing down how we're moving a bit, so we're not hitting that jiggle peak, making it not as possible to hit those ghost jumps as late as you are. But it's like allow these things to still be a thing. Just don't let it be as influential as it is. I just don't think Halo is when like you and I are playing a corner and we're both doing this. Like Halo to me, in like at least the competitive natural sense, is like who's out strafing, who's out shooting each other. That just doesn't feel like a true out shooting. It's just like who's hitting their trigger at the right time. And then it's like kind of like luck of the draw, and then like obviously just working some timings in. It's just like it almost like is a regression in that sense of I feel like depth in the competitive field. And then certain layouts of certain maps are just not that great. Aqua being primarily the one, and then having a lot of shotguns, like you mentioned, like the heat waves and stuff about GAing. Or we hadn't really discussed GAing. I think we're really hoping the pipeline of having some contacts with some of the pro team members would allow like some of these decisions, because we've already made a decision. We've already made votes amongst ourselves as pro players that like we want things to happen. It's only really been about like I think Aqua changing that layout a bit, and then the shotties. I think most people are actually a little bit okay with Heatwave because it got nerfed, but still like shotties kind of including that. But Bulldog is disgusting. Just point click, probably get your kill.
Anti-dopamine.
Exactly. There's just certain things like that where I just feel like we're catering to the wrong audience of like actual competitive Halo. And it's going from one spectrum of like, okay, the BR is pretty boring now. I feel like there's always been a way to kind of balance the BR to be a bit better in terms of like forcing a skill gap in some sense, but like they'd have to rework the weapon a good bit more. Almost finding that balance of making the BR act as like a single fire weapon in some sense, but still being a burst fire. But they're not
Like
going to do that.
3. Halo 3 was kind of like that, where you had to lead your shot just a little bit based on the direction of the opponent. Is that kind of the direction you're going?
I was thinking more so because of like Halo 3 was obviously quite a bit slower and more methodical, like or not necessarily methodical, but I would say it was, but it still is just more readable. Like you can, when someone's jumping, someone's like strafing, like there's no instantaneous like shifts and directions and things happening.
Have you seen that Twitter post where they show you the examples of Halo 2 and 3 strafing versus Halo 5?
Yeah.
In Halo 3, it's this kind of like continuous. It almost looks like like an athlete doing the karaoke shuffle, right? Like, have you ever seen that? It looks just like it. But in Halo Infinite, it's literally like and you can't. There's no pacing.
There's no strafe friction, so it's just instantaneous, like max speed strafe. Yeah,
exactly.
It's like WASD on controller.
Yes, yes, and I agree with that completely. And it's like that's why like I am in the boat of like I can still kind of appreciate a part of that to an extent. But when it's like, I feel like the strafing was relatively balanced with the BR, because the BR was a bit easier to shoot. If you're going to get that last shot, then okay, it doesn't really matter as much with the strafe. But now it's like we can't just change one thing and not change others. Like it's a ecosystem. Like they finely tuned the Infinite ecosystem pretty well at the start of the game when it first launched. And it's like, you can't just not change, the strafing or like certain, I don't know, aim assist values or things like that once you introduce a new weapon that's even more lethal. Because that's the thing too that people were complaining about the BR was like it's good in every single aspect. Well, now we have the bandit. Like people are not picking up the heat wave as much as they were. Bulldog is even just getting traded out probably every single time. Snipers, Stalker's pretty good still overall. It's pretty disgusting still, but like all those things are still way less effective than they were, and that's like okay to some extent. But I feel like again we're hitting another end of the spectrum where it's like, okay, well, the BR is really slow and really good in every single aspect. Well, now the bandit's probably, I think, a little too fast and way too good in like almost every aspect.
I feel like the aim assist thing combined with jiggle peeking, because it feels like if someone's jiggle peeking super fast by the wall, the aim assist is pulling your crosshair into the wall itself. So you're like fighting against the aim assist to like keep hitting your target.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It makes it even more difficult to kill somebody in the jiggle peek meta for that reason.
To an extent, for sure, because how I know the aim assist works in this game is like if this is the hitbox, that is the aim assist like hitbox region. They're like compared to older Halos and a lot of other games, whereas like you have almost like a region that extends out past it a little bit to start that slowdown, and then once you're on target, it's like not really even going to be that much more, but it could be a little bit more. Whereas like you only have this smaller region that's already harder to shoot because you have the no slowdown on the acceleration of your strafe. And then you have super amounts of aim assist here, like in this one little box. So it's like if you're on target, if your aimer's not really moving, it's like it's kind of hard to break that already. That's why, like, you know, the jiggle peak has become so prevalent, because you're just able to break aim assist constantly going behind those walls, and then constantly, and then again that instantaneous jiggle peak, and then you're controlling the pace instantly, and then like some people can never catch up. Again, there's definitely a skill gap. I just don't think that the degree that it's being used, every single gunfight is just this all the time now.
It's so silly. It almost makes me wish I could like somehow tweak the settings where it's like I could turn down aim assist if they're next to a wall, but obviously that would be impossible to code.
Right.
I guess while we're still on the topic of the meta, there's been a couple new maps announced. Obviously, one of them was a remake from the Halo 5 map, Coliseum. And then there's also a brand new map. Have you had a chance to take a look at or play on these new maps? And what are your thoughts on those?
I actually had not. I had been interested in them before, or at least like hearing the twinklings of a Coliseum remake, maybe. I'd seen some stuff of the Coliseum, not really so much the other one. The other one kind of looked like that Halo 4 Forge map, like Onyx, I think is what it was called, or something like that. It kind of reminded me of that, but the one thing that I'm bummed out about is that we're just getting, you know, flag Forge maps over and over and over again. We haven't had a singular new ball map the entirety of this game. And we've gotten some, you know, some strongholds, some hills. You know, it's nice to see some stuff that's all, at least with these flag maps too, like Coliseum. It's not just another 2 snipe map. It's like funny. The first year of the game, we didn't have any 2 snipe maps. Now all we have is like 2 snipe flag maps. And they can't get their head out of anything else besides doing, or like really focusing and propping those up instead of trying harder to reformat or rework some other maps to put in a new ball. Like we've desperately needed probably like out of any of them, maybe like Streets Ball. Like I think Streets is probably one of those maps right now that a lot of pro players still just like, we all play it, but it's like not the best spawns and all that. The way the meta is shaping up to be with the bandits, like it just feels weird to play. But yeah, we're kind of stuck with what we got, and I'll play it. Coliseum is I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good competitive map, but I'm kind of tired of all the flag Forge maps that are coming out.
Would you prefer, if we are to utilize Forge in Halo Infinite, that we go with completely reimagined maps, maybe inspired maps from the classics? Or it doesn't sound like you're that into the remakes. I don't think anybody is at this point. I think everyone's kind of crying out for some original content. What are your thoughts?
For me, at least, in terms of what I talked about with like the ball, I actually really liked the idea of trying to reformat those like Guardian and Lockout maps, where it was those maps. It had the blueprint, but then it had new stuff added and tossed in. And I'm like, damn, this is actually cool. And they looked really good. Like those were some of the best looking Forge maps I think I'd seen. That was like, I don't know, back in November when that H3 throwback like tourney was put together. Those I feel like are the throwback maps I would like to co-sign on more so, especially now. Like we got a few throwbacks in there. I think it's time to stop doing that.
Facts.
There's already talk and already, you know, info out there about there being like a Sank remake potentially getting in. It's like, dude, that all of these have been replayed over and over and over again. We either need brand new stuff, or if we are getting new stuff or old stuff, it needs to be almost reimagined to an extent, because the Guardian, the Lockout stuff, like it really opened up the map in a different way with the certain layouts. Not to say it's perfect, but it's like, if we're going to try anything out, I would love to try those out. And of course, like the weapon layouts, sandbox layouts, those need to be changed around, but it's like, that's not that hard. Just get some input with the Forger from like the pro competitive community and HCS, and like we'd probably be able to put something together that's great. But they didn't do that, and instead we're just getting Coliseum and Stank maybe.
I feel like a lot of these remakes feel claustrophobic. I don't know if you feel that, but that's sort of my take on Forge maps. And if we are to recreate, I agree entirely with you, Tommy. It needs to be reimagined first.
Yeah, shout out to the Forgers of Sylvanas. Sylvanas is the Guardian remake I think you're referring to, that's just got like a bit more extra space in different areas, which is almost necessary for Forgers, I think, because the curb slide is just completely broken and like completely changes the way everyone plays these maps. So like you just have to completely, I feel like, almost work around the curb slide mechanic as a Forger, but definitely a lot of things to tackle. I do wish there was maybe a bit more collaboration between like HCS, the pro players, and the Forgers. If there was some kind of like mind meld, or like you guys almost need like a conference or like a seminar or something to like
program
just work together. I think that would be fantastic and would be widely accepted by all parties. So
Yeah, that's the one thing. Sorry to cut in, but that's important because there had been some discourse, especially when the rig got announced as it being a competitive, what's it called, interference, getting introduced, and Matt Formal was getting flack about like him saying like where are the
Oh
vibes
yeah,
at,
right.
and like one thing I'll say is that I do appreciate what we got in terms of like I think that aesthetic that we got with the rig remake is actually better than what we got with Plaza. It's still gray though. And it's not even, again, it's not a knock to the Forger because what I feel like is happening with these things that are getting introduced is that HCS is not taking the reins to a certain degree that like they know the community sentiment. We have been saying this for so long. Like we got Taco Bell Pit. Like that was like the thing as soon as that came out. Like it's just gray and then it has and then it has like purple and yellow and like some little colors here and there, but it's like still very gray and like dark.
Taco Bell Pit.
There's already been plenty of videos and discourse about it, but just with Plaza. Like whenever I heard Plaza was going to come out and I knew the forge that we had, it's like I was actually kind of excited. Obviously, I still think the actual logistics of how it plays is a little definitely off from how Halo 5 it played, but at least visually, if the visuals can keep me in, like it makes me more interested, it makes me more like enticed to at least try to learn it, feel it out. But we're just getting super like dystopian, gray, neutral, like no life thrown into them. And I would say with those ones, that's intentional, so that's okay. I think the intentional look is good. That is just not what we should be as a community putting in these maps, and HCS should be trying harder to guide these forgers and like, look, you guys can make this if you want, but if you're gonna do this, we're gonna go with someone else who will put in our vision of like, we know we want this, this, and that, or at least this type of as aesthetic. Like it can't just be gray. Like it can't just be this or it can't just be that. Even if it has a still good gray aesthetic, which again I think Rig has, it's not what we're looking for. I'm sorry, it just is not. And we did not have any discourse as the pro players on if we wanted to play that. Do we like the looks? Do we like the layout? No, don't have anything to do with that. And that's not to say that we should have a lot of reign when it comes to that, but I just think that we're left in the dark a lot. And it's almost like HCS just lets things fester before they get us involved fully. That's kind of how it feels right now. And that's how it was with the GAs in the first year when it came to like Mangler, Sword, and I don't know if there's a few others, but Drop Weapon. It's like they weren't going to do anything. They didn't care enough to really accommodate. And I mean, at the time too, they were going through a lot. I understand, but they did not vocalize and communicate these things well. And then they didn't work with us until it was like a last ditch effort because we're like, all right, well, we're just gonna screw you guys and just not play with any of these things. Like anybody tuning into these games is just gonna watch us walk by a Mangler, walk by a Sword. We're not gonna pick it up. Like, and people are just like more confused rather than just never being there in the first place.
Awesome insights. I know that you've been very vocal on social media, and I hope you continue to do so. I do think it's very important for the pros to speak their minds on these things, and maybe we do see some changes that need to be implemented. We talked a bit about your winners bracket run where you guys lost a phase, but then in losers bracket, you guys went on a bit of a heater, only losing one game total to the likes of SSG, Sentinels, and Rebellion, making quick work of the best teams in Halo. How did you guys bounce back to earn another shot at phase in the grand finals?
Kind of what we talked about. Like we felt like we were coming out a little flat, but coming out a little flat doesn't mean that we're playing bad. It just means that we're not playing as efficient, as like close to our peak as we need to win this series against FaZe when they're playing as well as they were. So I think for us, it just meant we needed to tighten up. We're still playing well, but we don't need to worry too much. And I felt like that was enough to really kind of take it to the other teams as we did. FaZe just kind of had our number, but I think that just goes to show that like, when we're dialed in, like we're gonna take over like that. It's just going to be the way it unfolded for us, and we weren't too worried about the FaZe series too much. So that's what we just kind of carried through the rest of the series. Even after that game one lost, like SSG, it wasn't too much of a worry to us. It's like we still played them well. We came out a little flat, but like just stay to our plans, stay locked, just keep our heads, keep our heads up, keep our like eyes open, ears open, and just tighten this, tighten that, and then we're good. That's all it was.
Yeah, going into the grand finals, Optic looked strong in the objectives, but lost both the Slayers. Is that just a matter of FaZe's team composition, their strategy when it comes to Slayers? What's your takeaway after that series and your second place finish?
Yeah, I think Slayers for us has still just been a pain point. I think we've really tightened up on them more intentionally after Arlington. But we knew that like, it was going to just still be like Slayers are always going to be a decider. It's always a game 5, and so on. They're always going to be very prevalent in a series and very important in a series. FaZe is definitely known for like their slaying, like even to a degree of overslaying, but a lot of times that can just create openings. It can create more opportunities than even online or in scrims in a LAN environment. When you get a kill or two, it can really kind of create a certain pressure that isn't normally there. So I think like they really just try to hammer in on that like sort of play style, no matter the condition, no matter the avenue. Like I said, online, LAN, whatever. So I think that's why they really can lend themselves to that. So we just have to play their game. We have to play patient. We have to play together. We have to play with the weapons. Like we can't. That's why it's like a dialing in. It's a discipline aspect where if we were just a bit more disciplined, if we played our weapons a bit better, played together a bit better, it could have just been a different outcome entirely.
Yeah, those are all good thoughts. I feel like, people talk about timing all the time in objectives, but I think it's just as important if you could make that case, I think, for Slayers. But let's talk about Dead Zone for a little bit. With every passing tournament, it feels like Zane fits in more and more. I even made the claim that on Sunday, he looked to be in MVP form. He was doing it all for optics, slaying, top fragging in certain games and getting the most objective in others, all the while always providing a consistent number of assists. I think he had 17 assists in a Slayer. I mean, with 14 kills, only 12 deaths. That's an extraordinary stat line. You just don't see that often. How has Dead Zone fit into this optic team, and how has he made you guys better?
Yeah, I think Zane's fit in really well, like pretty much automatically. And we kind of knew that whenever we wanted to pick him up. Like we just knew that he was going to fit into like the ecosystem that we had. And we were already close enough with him, like out of game, that we just knew the player that he was, and just it carried over very quickly. We don't get to grand finals. We don't make the runs that we still did if that wasn't the case. I think Zane brings a certain consistency factor, especially when it comes to just like the outplay potential, the slay factors. Even though he is like known for the assists or the OBJ or whatever, like he still brings that fire when it comes to that department. So I think it's more of the team aspect for us. Certain elements, at least with the London event, of just like not feeling the most comfortable individually, at least for myself. And I think all of us could have, I think a lot of players felt that at different times throughout the weekend. That just kind of lends itself to like, Dane's just going to be that perfect fourth man for us, I think, to carry into the season. I think we'll just keep getting better. I think he'll keep providing what he always has and then some as we just keep learning.
Love that. You guys look very strong for sure, and will only get stronger as time goes on. Now that we've discussed London and gotten all your thoughts, we're going to actually dial it way back to the very beginning. We like to ask every guest about their origin story. So how did a young Tommy first get introduced to video games?
Yeah, I got first introduced with my older brother. I got the older brother story of, I think I was like 4 years old. My brother is 7.5 years older than me. So he was just like a little tween, like 11 and a half, 12 years old. I think he played it over at like his friend's house, and he got his own Xbox and he was playing. So then obviously me being young, like just put a controller in my hands if we had them and just got to playing. Started very young, and we had some friends, and we'd always play like 4-player split screen on CE, Combat Evolved, and that was just that was the best. That was the best back in the day. Starting out that way.
Wow. So CE was that your very first game that you played as a young lad?
That or GoldenEye. It was between. I mean, and maybe it was some other like. Those are the ones that like really stick out, especially like the early memories of just gaming. I wouldn't be surprised if I played just some Mario's or Sonics or whatever, Crash Bandicoot, maybe on like the original PlayStation. But yeah, those are the most clear memories I have of like gaming was Combat Evolved and like GoldenEye.
That's awesome. It makes sense that you started your chops very young. I feel like that's the case for most standouts in anything in life, really, is starting super young and building those neural pathways with FPS games early. Any other games that you like were into before, like maybe RPGs or like as you grew up, or have you just always stick to FPS?
No, I've played a whole bunch of stuff. I normally have stuck to shooters though, but I've played a whole bunch of stuff. Like I'm big on Fallouts, big on Gears of War, Borderlands. Those were probably the 3 most prominent other games besides Halo while I was growing up. Got really into Dark Souls whenever I was a bit older. I mean, I've played all kinds of other games too, like other RPGs that I can't probably really think of off the top of my head right now, but those are some of the most prominent ones throughout my entire life.
Now, you started out your competitive career with the name Saiyan. So in those early days, how did you get your gamer tag, and was that your first tag that you created?
No, it wasn't the first one, and I didn't even create the first ones that I had. My brother was creating tags for me. So then my first tag was Lil X Saiyan, because that was always like a thing, like with a lot of like old school, like, oh, Lil this or X that in the tags. And then my
Lil
brother was
Poison.
just like, yeah. So my brother was like, he was following competitive Halo. He was like, you're going to be Lil X Saiyan, because we were big into Dragon Ball. Like, we were always big into Dragon Ball too. So he's like, yeah, that's going to be you. So that was me for like 8 years. Like, I think I got that tag when I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. And then by the time I was 16, 17, I still had that tag in Halo 5 throughout the entire time, the entirety of it.
What went into the thought behind the switch from Saiyan to Lucid? Was it just trying to avoid something like a copyright strike from Goku or Vegeta themselves? Was it trying to differentiate from Saiyan, who was previously on that final boss roster? Was it philosophical? What was the key behind that decision?
Yeah, it's just all of it. It's especially, I think, from like for me, it was very much like, I know I want this to be a career. I shouldn't be like trying to ride off anything. Was like the main driving factor, because I was always fine being like, no, I'm not that Saiyan. Like, it's kind of funny. He's not around anymore, so it's like, okay, if I kind of take it for now. But it wasn't that I was necessarily tired of it, but I was just like, I just want to have my own identity that people can then associate, like, that's just who I am. So it was before Infinite dropped, and I'd been sitting on that for a while, and I was just kind of like looking around, like thinking of some ideas on what to do. And I just knew, like, yeah, I want to make, merch, or I want to not, if I get big enough, I don't want to have any sort of like copyright thing with like emotes or this or that, or any sort of assets that kind of, even though I still have some stuff like that, it's like I don't want it to be like painfully obvious that that's where it's coming from. And so I was just ready for it. I was very much ready for it.
How'd you ultimately come up with Lucid? Because a Saiyan, kind of like aggressive and hot-headed. Lucid quite literally means calm, cool, and collected, serene, which I think is a much better representation of you. Every time I see you on the main stage with your player cam, you'll hit something like an overkill or a crazy snipe, and you don't move an inch. No facial expression, no nothing. You are Lucid. How'd you come up with that name?
Yeah, it was just like a brainstorm session, a few of them at least. It was not something I just figured out in a day. I remember specifically being in Bound Stream and hit like when we were still in like the H5 downtime era, and I was talking with my now fiance, but girlfriend at the time, Kylie, and I was like, yeah, I think I really want to go with like a change. So it's like I'm just thinking of stuff, like talking with her about it, and then I was going into his chat, like talking in the chat, just doing whatever for the day, and like just kind of throwing out like a name here or there. And then like I thought of Lucid. So then I was just like, put that out there. And most of the people were like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I was like, I did like that. And I was like, but I didn't hop on it right away. I didn't like instantly like, all right, it's done. Like that, I probably sat on that for like a few more weeks or like a month before I even made
Wow.
this sort of change. So I was like, I got to be really certain I'm ready for that, like that change, and like just go for it. But that's pretty much what it took, was just like a few brainstorms. And I just liked the way it sounded. I wanted something clean. I didn't want like 2 or 3 words to it. I was like, I just want like that name that's associated. And that's what it came to.
Going into the beginning of your competitive career, just taking a look at your wiki, it looks like Trippy's been with you every step of the way. How did you meet Joey?
Yeah, I think Joey and I just met up through some eights, like climbing up the ranked ladder for myself. I think Joey was like almost more involved in the competitive community a lot more directly than I was, and just kind of associated with a lot more people like a lot earlier on. And he was like more of that online like matchmaking kid that like I think showed up to an event or two, or maybe didn't, but like was trying to, and like he was just playing a lot of twos, like a lot of eights, kind of competing some online stuff. I just wanted to get better at Halo 5. Like at the time, I was just grinding. I always played Halo, so I was always pretty good, but then I was like really grinding during the summer, um, during high school, and I was just like, I'm gonna just like get good. I'm like looking for a job. I'm doing good in school, but it's like I got nothing else to do, so I'm going to just put a lot of time into this. And playing a few online like tournaments, still play pretty well. I hopped from like one team or two, not even necessarily on my own accord. Like certain things worked out where like I got bailed on a couple times, like once or twice. Some people couldn't show up to a tournament that we were like maybe trying to go to, and then get into an 8s lobby with like Joey, and then we're like, yeah, we're gonna try a team. And we started playing with, I think our first 2 teammates were VTech and Brainstorm. I could be wrong, but I think that was the first 2 that Joey and I had. And then they bailed on us, I think. I want to say that was the case. I think they bailed on us. They like form another team. And this is pretty soon, or like, I think our first event was coming up pretty soon. I can't quite remember the timeline. But I think that's what was the case. They bailed on us because they thought they had a better team. Given amateur scene, that's just how it goes. I understand. And then I think we picked up. I think we were playing with Scariotic and we were playing with Tire Iron. I think that's the flow of how that went. And then we were still playing pretty good online, but Joey and Tyler hated Scariotic. Given everyone pretty much hated him. So then we ended up dropping him and picking up Bohm. Like a couple weeks, I think, before the tournament, because he was just really toxic. You know about Scariotic and the H5 saga. But yeah, that was the build up to our first event in Vegas.
Yeah, I see it here. Trippy saying Tire Iron, Bomex with Coach Mash. Shout out to Mash, legend in the scene as well. You guys finished 9 through 11, which is a weird result when I look at it. I don't know why it's not 9 through 12. I don't know if it's a different bracket type, but
I have no idea.
They executed the 12 team behind the venue.
It's like, I don't know what happened.
It's your punishment for
9 through
facing
11
12.
is a weird result there, but you actually split with Joey and you end up joining forces with Ninja. And this is just 1 year before his meteoric rise to what he is now in the gaming universe. What was that like, I guess, witnessing his fame, and what was it like to team with him?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy because the way that worked was, I think I almost got scouted by L-Town on LG at the time, a bit earlier, after, or pretty much during that Vegas event. And I think my setup and things were just like not good enough. And Joey was like at least a bit more well known, that like I think they wanted to go with Joey over that, because they're like, okay, well, these guys are kind of like the same. Joey's a little bit more known, like he's got like the proper setups, like we're gonna go with him. So Joey actually got picked up on LG before I did. And then he went to St. Louis, I think, with them. I don't think they ended up placing like that well. And then I think Joey actually left them. I don't think he got dropped. I think he left them to go team with like Sparty or some team. I don't remember exactly. Or no, he was teaming with Nated. I don't know what that full team was, but I think he started teaming with Nated. And I ended up getting hit back up after that, even with my janky setup that I had. It was a climb, dude. I mean, I was just playing on like a generic Xbox. I think I was playing, like, I hopped in Discord like on my phone, like some random like Android phone that I had at the time with like earbuds plugged in or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I had to make do with what I had. And I was playing on like a 32-inch like TV with like an original Xbox One, playing H5 back then. Tyler Ninja was crazy. He was a really awesome personality, like person to just be around, but teammate, like he was like really hot and cold. I think everyone could tell you that, but like he'd just be absolutely on one, frying the best player in the lobby, and then he'd just kind of go like, I don't know,
Sudeth mode.
Yeah, he'd go like,
no disrespect to the Sudeths, but you know,
yeah,
I think that's
just go like
the proper
double
fit in.
neg. He'd go like double neg in a Slayer game 5 or something out of the blue, and it's like, what just happened? He's like running it down, like thrust sliding out bottom mid, ego challenging everything off respawn. We're down like 15 or something, but he was still fun to be around and play. Yeah, then we ended up I think Victory X at the time he was still working like a real man's job. So he was kind of like out of it, understandably. Halo wasn't getting any sort of like salary that we were now. So it was still kind of iffy on that. We got something, but not much. So then we ended up dropping him, even though I loved Cam. Cam was a lot of fun to be around too, but that's when we picked Joey back up.
I wanted to ask you, when you teamed with Ninja, could you see the inklings and the makings of the world's biggest gaming superstar when you teamed with them?
Well, I didn't necessarily think of the world's biggest, but it was obvious that he was. I mean, he already had like an audience. Like he still even has an audience, or had an audience in Halo 5 back then, like bigger than some of us now. Like even with Infinite and all the great things that came with it in terms of like presence, online presence. He still held his own during that time playing Halo 5, and he started playing H1Z1, and it's like you could feel it, and it was kind of cool to see, but also terrible because as a teammate, he's on for scrims and he's insta bailing to go play H1Z1. He was competing on the LG team for that, And
Oh,
he was like super
wow.
prioritizing that, understandably, but
Sure.
being just like, I'm on the come up as
What am
well.
I,
And like, this
chopped
is my
liver?
everything. Yeah, it's just like, damn, like, all right, I understand, but damn. So again, that's why I was like very conflicted, but I had nothing but love for him. And it was, yeah, his personality is so outgoing and bubbly that it's just like, yeah, he's gonna do great things with the right opportunities, like he obviously did.
Super entertaining personality, and as a Halo player, I remember him just being a glass cannon. Like you said, like sometimes he's going 20 kills in the Slayer, sometimes he's 5 kills in the Slayer. It's like you don't know what you're gonna get. But yeah, shout out to Ninja. He's done a lot for Halo, even now with those throwback tournaments. I mean, he still loves Halo, I'm sure. Just following that timeline though, after you split with Ninja, you reunite with Trippy, but also join forces with one of the greatest players of all time, Pistola. What was it like teaming with the Wizard in those Halo 5 days?
Yeah, I mean, I loved teaming with Justin. He was a friend in and out of game, and he was an amazing player. And he was definitely another just like stepping stone of like upping your knowledge, like just ascending to that next level of just like actually understanding the deeper intricacies of like how to win. And a lot of people really had no faith in him at the time with like envy and whatnot. And I mean, Joey and I saw it, and it was like kind of the same with Boo Boo too, because I think he had gotten dropped from Splice. So it's just like these guys are great players. We should be the ones to team with them. Hopefully, they think we're great enough too. And that team was formed. We were still a pretty good force to reckon with at the time. It was a lot of fun. Justin was a friend in and out of game, so
Miss him a lot.
Yeah, we love Justin, man. He's an icon and a staple of the Halo community.
yeah.
But towards the end of Halo 5, the conversation was all about Splice and Tox, but you guys were still winning tournaments. Do you feel like your place in the history books was overshadowed during this time period?
No, not necessarily. I mean, we weren't running anything major. Like we never won a major. We were pushing and we were always top 3 though. Like we were in the top 3 discussion, but we were still kind of getting casted aside because we weren't making those grand finals, or if we did, like by the very end of H5, it's like we just didn't really have the wherewithal to kind of come out on top with it. Like we just weren't putting up. So it's like I think we won maybe like a couple online tournaments, maybe, but even then, it's like we weren't consistently winning those. So we were just that team that was still we were just learning a lot, and it was just like just figuring ourselves out. So I don't think it's necessarily an overshadow. I think long or a little bit further down the line, like people kind of thought that I wasn't really that great at H5, which was a little like weird to kind of hear some people say, but it's just like I'm ego challenging, winning a lot of fights still against the best in the world, and we're going at it. And like
Mhm.
the competition was still tight, but yeah, it's just the way that it goes. If you're not winning, that's just the way it goes.
So you'd say it was more of a big 2 at that point, and you guys were third, sure, but not quite at that level where you could contest in a grand final.
Yeah, because I mean, we beat. That was the reason why we were still in the top 3 is because we beat Tox at the time and Splice multiple times on land, like each of them multiple times. But it wasn't like, oh, we got to put it all together and beat everyone in the same weekend and put it all together to get those wins. So it's like, and we've had some dominant wins too, but it's like we also had some dominant losses. So that's just kind of the way it worked out. Like they're the ones still pulling it together to win those series as a whole against multiple of the top. So, and that's just the way it works. I definitely understand that, especially nowadays.
So going into Halo Infinite, you team back up with your duo Trippy alongside APG and Pistola. What were your expectations going into the start of Halo Infinite?
Expectations were pretty high. I think it was like, yeah, we're going to be a top 3 team guaranteed because it was still me, Joey, and Ola. Like that's 3/4 of our team where we were pushing everybody, and we still had Brad coming in that we felt very confident with. So it's like we should be top 3, and I think, especially for myself, speaking for myself, like I was like, I felt like I was getting even better playing Halo. Somehow, even in the off season, the off era, dark age of Halo 5 from 2018 to like 2021, like I feel like I just kept getting better, even though I was only playing like matchmaking some 8s here and there. So it was like I was ready. I was rearing for Infinite to drop and really take advantage of it.
In our interview with Formal, he mentioned that when joining the Optics squad, it simply came down to a measure of fit when it came to Pistola. How difficult was that, and what was some of your key takeaways from that time period for you?
Yeah, that was a hard decision. I mean, we were still a team from the start of Infinite. I think it felt longer than it actually was looking back on it. Like we also had a lot of build up too, because we were like a team from like August of
Remember, yeah.
2021 is when we got like announced. We had the first tournament, which was kind of a letdown, but still promising, showing promise with the first tournament. And then with, what was it, Anaheim, we got second, but it just kind of had that feeling of like there's a certain missing piece I felt like with our team, and Joey and I felt the same, of course. Whereas like we just kind of need someone that has even more passion. And at least with Matt at the time, like he was grinding every single day and he was a beast. And it just really showed that like he was ready to be on a top team and ready to put it forward to really try to win. You know, we still loved Justin, we loved Ola, and he was still a great player, but we kind of felt like we needed like it kind of felt like he didn't have the again that drive as much. Whereas with Brad, like I think Matt even felt that, and the relationship that they have is more of like a friendship that they knew each other really well. He felt very comfortable with that, and it's like, well, maybe we would have dropped Brad earlier, but we're not really too sure. Kind of have like our reservations, but it's really up to you, Matt. Like we just want you on the team, and we want you to be comfortable too with us. And he felt that Brad was that choice. So we're like, all right, this will be it. It was a tough decision. It did not happen very quickly. Once we kind of came to that conclusion, it happened quickly because we didn't want to hold on. We were really hoping that like Justin was he kind of just completely fell off the face of the earth, unfortunately. 'Cause it was like we dropped him, just placed second. It was like, Justin, you're still a beast. Like there's something that we feel like we're missing, unfortunately, and we think that's like it's at the cost of you for now. But it's like I still love you, still thought you were a great player, like that type of conversation. He seemed receptive to it at the time, but I think it just hit him hard. But it was not an easy decision to make, but it was ultimately the right one for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely hit him really hard. I mean, he, like you said, just kind of dropped off the face of the planet. Even to this day, he's not really communicating with a lot of people. I think he has been showing up in some streams here and there. Shout out to Shinny, like a classic Halo streamer. I see Justin in his chat occasionally, but I do wish he kept competing. I mean, he's still like, there's no way he couldn't still be on a top like 4 team at the very least. He would be
Yeah.
absolutely competing with the best if he just continued, but I guess his heart just wasn't in it.
For Joey and I, we were, again, like we talked about, on the cusp of being like not just top 3, top 2, like we're here to win. And we were so close so many times, especially by the end of H5. And it's like we can't stay in a cycle of like kind of like still being great, but like we have to have that hunger. And we had it. So we had to have like our entire team feel that. That's really a big driving factor for a lot of teams and a lot of players, where it's like obviously everyone wants to win, but it's like, what are you going to do to make it possible? That's the deciding factor.
Renegade famously said on the podcast he'd take 4 of the hungriest Halo players in the world over 4 of the best Halo players in the world. So I think hearing more of these thoughts and conversations from top Halo players, that seems to be a big driving force is, well, I guess, drive itself.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Things have changed since then. I mean, you guys are still in the mix always. I think the meta is just a lot tighter than it was then, to where almost every team seems to have a chance. Can you speak on, like, what do you think it is about teams like Shopify Rebellion or like SSG that have made them so successful in the new meta?
Like Shopify is a good example of like the hungriest. Like those are the guys, even amongst ourselves, like they're not a team that has really been pushing into the top 2, top 3 at all yet. They've been very close. They've been on their separate teams pushing and having their matches individually too, where it's just like they probably feel like they can really challenge and they're great players. So there's like a certain point I want to get into where it's like I don't want to discredit anyone, even SSG, but like there's a certain meta again that I feel like what we talked about with the meta that's developed, where there is that tightening, there is that allowance that I feel like certain things should not be happening that are happening. I don't want to discredit it. I'm not here to like rain on anyone's parade. But that's why like it's just more of the opinion of mine, where I don't think it's like, oh, we should be playing like year 1 Halo Infinite. Like that's what we should be playing right now and blah blah blah. Not gonna say that. But again, I think we've gone to 2 different ends of the spectrum, where year 1, it was like, yeah, maybe the way that we play, the meta probably favored us. And it's like the meta that is here favored some other teams. Whereas I think the overall feel of that meta has driven my sort of like thought process and like why certain teams push harder now than they ever had before. To each their own. I think they're still doing great. They're great players, but yeah, I think that is definitely a very large driving force in my opinion.
Tommy, you're one of the, if not the most forward-facing content creator-focused competitors inside of Halo. You often stream for long hours. You upload videos to YouTube. From your perspective, why is that, and how important do you think content is to produce as a Halo player? I get excited about you because you're one of those guys that shows that you can do both. You can create content and win. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible. I think everyone should be doing it. I don't think everyone has to do it the exact same way. Of course, it's not expected. It shouldn't be expected, but you should be doing something. I think every player should be streaming if they can. I just think it's just like you're already making money, you're already living the dream, competing, and we're making good money doing it. Might as well be putting out something, and it still comes back to you. Like you put out content that keeps people involved, keeps people invested, makes them understand a bit more as to why they should be invested, and see some crazy plays. You know, produce some content that then churn out even more and bring even more back to the community and yourself monetarily and just more culturally. I think that's a big part as to why like there was a lot of success earlier on with just like the grassroots hunger nature with like earlier Halo, where like just the forge maps, the clips, the pictures, like just custom games, all those things that brought people together. It was like that imagination, that drive that really kept the community alive while the developers on their end kept it together. So I just think as a professional player, you should be trying your hardest to do something. You don't even have to do like I felt like I didn't know, but I kind of knew that this could happen with Infinite, where it's like if I just got the right bones of like a foundation for myself, like I was streaming a lot during Halo 5 during like 2019 to like 2021. And I, changed my alias. I started doing YouTube content. I didn't even have an editor. I just did like raw uploads. And it's just like I didn't have crazy things like I paid for this or I paid for that here and there where I could for like emotes or this sort of asset for the stream or whatever. It wasn't like high budget. It's just like you're just putting content out there. And like I got a decent viewership even for Halo 5 at the time, but it's just like I know that I'm going to be at the forefront whenever Infinite drops, and I want that to be the case. And then luckily enough, we were able to get on Optic, and that even pushes myself and all of us even more forward. So it's just like it's that same aspect of like when luck meets skill, like the opportunity, and you see like a flourishing sort of nature happen. It's like everyone can have those bits even. Everyone's going to have varying amounts of success or desire for it, of course, but if there is a greater desire, which I think most of us have, especially as players, to see like Halo grow or be more, popular, I guess is just the word to use. It's like you got to try to actually be producing. You got to be doing something.
Yeah, there is a lot of luck in when it comes to discoverability with content, I guess, but one of my favorite quotes is the harder I work, the luckier I get. So I think that it's once you do put that time in, like it's just kind of the perfect storm. At some point, it's going to happen. So love to see your success with that.
Hex also has a great quote when it relates to streaming. He tells all of his players, I've heard him say this once before too, I think a Gears of War player at the time when I was over at Optic. He's like, what? You don't like free money? Because like you said,
Yeah.
Tommy, you're streaming anyways, or you're playing anyways, so why not press one freaking button to start bringing in more revenue, right? And you got to get it while the getting's good. So I'm right there with you, Tommy. I think you're a beacon for what the example is for content and competition in Halo, and big fan of that. Big fan of that.
Appreciate it.
One of my fondest memories from all the HCS events I've attended was actually the Thursday before Worlds in Season 1, where myself, you, Tommy, Makowski, Swish, Ace, Gilkey, Formal, and a few others, we all played some Texas Hold'em poker in the hotel lobby until what seemed like 1 or 2 in the morning. It was your first time playing poker, but I noticed how quickly you were figuring out the strategy, seemingly learning the math behind it as you played. It kind of made me wonder, are there any other games you could see yourself playing competitively in the future if, for example, Halo somehow faded to black?
Yeah, I mean, I had something like that. That's also a really good memory of mine. I really did enjoy that whenever we had that at the first Worlds. It was a lot of fun. But
I thought you were trolling, by the way. I was like, typical fucking ringer. He comes in, he knows everything about poker. And he's like, oh, this is my first time playing. It actually was. So that was a huge takeaway for me.
Absolutely.
How quickly you picked it up.
But yeah, I had a sort of stint with Apex actually in 2019 whenever the game dropped, and Halo was just darkness. So I went over there, and I actually started getting on like I was on basically on an amateur squad pushing pro lobbies, getting invested in that, and it didn't take too long. Obviously, already being a Halo pro, it's like you get some sort of title to some degree, and like that's one of those like luckiness type of things where it helps with the right opportunity and the right drive. So it's like I could see myself getting into other games if I really felt like I needed to. Halo is definitely the passion. It's the drive for the majority of what I see as my competitive future. But a game like even X Defiant, that if it shows promise and somehow in the next year, there's no Halo, it's like maybe COD, maybe. But I also have that content drive with like I would love to stay on Optic. So the organization has done very right by us. I love the ecosystem and the people there. I'm primarily focused on like I want to stay with them and whatever I can do to kind of branch out to make ends meet is what I would like to do. So it's very dependent on I feel like the present ecosystem, and that's too far in the future to really say.
By the way, if you guys don't know, we do have a Patreon. If you guys want to support us, it's just $5 a month. You get access to some funny outtakes from each episode. You also get early access to the podcast, and you can also ask some questions to the guests. It's actually free if you just join the Patreon as a free member. You can submit some questions. So here are some questions that came in from the Patreon. This one's from Watsy. He said, what was the hardest decision or change you've had to make to not only help yourself, but also the team be the best that they can be?
The hardest decision was probably that dropping Ola. That was probably the hardest one.
And this one comes from Meg. What are some tips to have your hair styled as good as yours?
All right, the routine that I do, I think I've explained this on my stream before, but it's probably been a while. But it's like take a shower, dry off. I actually use a hair dryer, and I have like a piece to it that's like basically like a comb. So it's like you just kind of blow it up. I don't use like too hot. I just try to get it dry and push it up a bit, and then I use Sheer Revival pomade, and I think it's more like matte is like the maybe style of it. It's like has like a stronger hold. So get that going. It doesn't even take that long. It's like a I don't know 5-minute routine after taking a shower. So I just do that every night.
So speaking of hair and coif management, Halo has had its own thick history of hairstyles. In celebration of your joining on the podcast, we put together a little segment we're calling Halo Hair with Lucid.
Wait, who recorded this? Who did that? Who put that together?
I think it might be AI generated. I'm not sure.
Oh, man.
Kind of threw it together.
God.
I thought you sung that, Eli. I thought that was you.
Yeah, dude, that's my other career. But we got a little tier list here. We're just going to run through them here. We'll see how Lucid ranks Halo hair. So,
Oh my god, this is such a large list.
we'll go through it quick. So
Okay.
this is Azarum from Mexico. He won the FFA. You took a picture with him. Where would you
Yeah.
put him?
Let's do A.
Okay. Bound.
Yeah, Bound's got to get a C, dude. He's got to do something. He's got a little bit more structure. He needs a little bit more structure, and he'd look good. He'd look even better. He still looks good.
What about Boo Boo?
Jesse, I think he's got to get a C too.
Need some work, Jesse.
Cycle, C.
Good. Descendant.
He'll get a B.
Okay.
Kevin,
Eco.
I'm sorry, Kevin. You got to get a D.
Eco bringing nothing to the table when it comes to follicles.
Fizz, S tier, of course.
Yeah, it's got to be S tier.
Yes, let's go. Fear itself the first S tier.
These guys with their curly hair, they look pretty solid. I'll give Brad a B. I'll give it a B.
Glory.
Probably a C.
It's a European style. I feel like they all love that.
Richie, probably D, dude. It's got to be C.
Legend. Good.
Yeah.
TJ.
TJ, C. He's had better hair. Mikwin, C.
This is Noble.
I'll give him a B.
Okay.
It's pretty solid.
Tom.
That's gotta be a C.
Pistols had so many different hairstyles.
I know. And I think Justin gets a C for that one.
Okay.
Precision. B. Ryan's got to get the locks, the flow with that. I think he's got to get an S.
Yeah,
Let's go.
He needs to bring that back.
He's gotta.
Original
Curly and
Stan.
long hair. Oh man, lottery.
I think he gets like a B.
Original saying. All right.
Yeah.
Skeptify.
Skeppy. I think he gets a B. He looks pretty good. Looking solid. God, the bald head. That's gotta get an A. He's gotta get an A.
Let's go.
SLG.
I think he gets an A.
Yeah, he's looking solid. The Europeans got that
Pretty
same
good.
style.
Pretty
Yeah.
good.
Snakebite hat. It's
PJ?
just a hat.
Yeah, PJ. I think he's got to get the D. He's got to get the D tier.
Soul Snipe.
Soul Snipe. I think Soul Snipe gets a. I think he gets an A.
Yeah, that's looking.
His hair's looking pretty good. Raiden, I think he gets B.
What?
Ooh,
I think it's
That's
B.
controversial.
Jesus?
That's gonna be
Nah,
controversial.
I like the length. I think he could just do a bit more with it. I'm not
Okay.
I'm not the biggest fan of the layout.
It's a Spectre.
Alright.
Spectre, I'm sorry. I think you got to get D tier.
Oof. This is an
I don't know
old
if you can grow it out a
pick.
bit, but yeah, it's just a little too
It's
He's
pretty
squared.
straightforward. Yeah.
C.
Looks
I think.
military-esque.
Yeah, maybe C tier for T squared.
Tapping.
Bay, I think he gets C.
Vetra.
Etra, yeah, probably C as well.
Uh,
Yeah, the
Can't-
buzz cut.
Cam.
I mean, the buzz cut kind of fits Cam though, so he gets like a C. I think it fits. It's not like terrible.
Okay. Walshy.
I think Walsh gets a B. He's looking pretty good. Looking pretty
Red Bull
solid.
hat
Sharp.
on though, S tier, right? Like that was.
Yeah, that's got to
a
go
classic
up,
look.
but I
Cab
think,
backwards.
yeah, we got to go modern though for the most part.
Yeah.
At least current day.
This is Rice on that Australian team.
I think he gets a B.
And this is hilarious. Kills put this in there. This is me from like 2010, maybe. that's my haircut.
Oh
from 2010.
god. I mean, I understand the bowl cut. I had that too. I think it's got to be C tier though, Eli. I'm sorry.
Oh, jeez. All right. What? This is Makowski. How
Ooh.
I
old is
should have
this
sent you guys
picture?
my flow. I had long hair. Oh man, this is.
Yeah, that one's not looking the greatest,
Uh-oh.
Mikowski. It's not looking the greatest. That might have to be D tier. I'm sorry.
This is pretty
Hey, you're looking
rough.
good now, Mikowski. All right, you're
I
looking
appreciate
great.
it. I got more flow now.
Brad, I
Bra-
think Brad's got A tier. He's looking good.
Yeah, he is.
God, the bowl cut again. We all had it.
Lunchbox.
That's got to be C.
Roy.
I do like the Roy haircut at the time. I think that's a
The
B. That's
bandana
worthy of a
too.
B.
The bandana
Yeah,
makes
that's
it
a good
come
look.
together. Yeah. All right.
Matt's
now enter
flow.
your teammates. Yeah.
Oh damn, this is gonna be harder. I think Matt gets a C. Zane maybe a C. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think C.
Joey.
Joey. I wish Joey he had the longer flow when we were younger, but that current picture, Joey, I think it's got to be C too. I think everyone's just in C tier.
Man.
Damn.
No love for the teammates. All right.
Unfortunately,
Where you-
no. There have been iterations that I've loved a bit more. So got to go with
Right.
the pictures.
All right. What about you?
Oh, S tier, of course.
Hey, can you
No
actually
shame, no
slide that
shame.
over to number one for us, Eli, in front
Where's
of
the- where's
itself?
the
There we go.
SS
Oh yeah.
plus?
Oh yeah.
Hex. Hex has got a good flow. I'll give him an A. I'll give him an A. He's got a good, well put together head of hair there. I
All
think
right.
that's the list. I
There
can't.
it is.
That's it. I gotta look it over though. Just make sure it seems kind of uniform. Yeah, I think that's okay. That's okay.
All right. So there you
I'll
have it,
sign off
guys.
on that one.
All
You actually
right.
you look just like freaking Lunchbox, Eli, in your picture. You guys twins, maybe?
We do look
third.
super similar, actually. Now that I look at it, that's
That is
kind of wild.
uncanny.
You guys
that's
are
crazy.
triplets?
Yeah, imagine.
Dude,
We-
wow.
I still remember their first event, Charlotte 07. Crazy throwback. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today, Tommy. Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, I had a blast. I always enjoy the podcast long form style, just getting to talk. You guys did your research. You guys went pretty deep. Nice to know you guys got a lot of knowledge, obviously, about the entirety of the competitive ecosystem, landscape, and like we kind of talked about, just like the grassroots, like working your way up type of feel. I feel like this is just like a great example of just like doing it right. So I really appreciate you guys putting out the content like you are, and just the sort of ecosystem you're fostering, and hopefully it just keeps on growing. I think that's what we all hope.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. This was an absolute blast. Definitely one to remember for sure for us. And yeah, if you ever want to come back on the podcast in the future, we'll probably hit you up maybe later in the season after you guys get a couple more wins under your belt, and we'll recap later.
Sounds great.
Reign of terror is going to come to an end. Looked like he was channeling his old